I spoke with Surok today. Surok is somebody I met on Discord surrounding the conversation about magic that happened a while back. Yeah, me and Surok have talked once on the channel, but he's back, and we talked about marriage a little bit, and what that is, and then just magic and Catholicism, the question of Jesus, and his bodily resurrection, divinity. So it was pretty good. Yeah. So enjoy the talk with Surok. I'll put my first talk with Surok in the description. Yeah, so enjoy. I'm trying to figure all that out. How's married life treating you? Would you recommend such an
highly recommend? It's a big part of my life, so
yeah,
I think it, in a Petersonian way, it provides a lot of meaning. So
yeah, I'd imagine it'd be like the most important part in some. Yeah. Well, okay, so anyway, I don't know if
so I would say it's marriage is something that it took me a couple years to understand, that it's not just a romantic relationship, especially when there's children involved. It becomes more about the family rather than the romantic relationship.
Right. With kids, does it start to seem like almost like an enterprise almost, or like oh, we're trying to stay afloat as well as love each other well. You know what I mean? Does that follow?
Yeah, I mean, you just got to put your own selfish desires to the side and think, what's the best for the family and what's best for the relationship.
Right. Yeah, that the second part.
I mean, we all kind of want some companionship, and I think, biologically we desire that. But I think the level beyond just, attraction, there's something, more deep and fulfilling with kind of a structured relationship that's centered around family and mutual, I know the way that our family kind of structured our careers is that, we assessed, who was doing better at the time, and we said, well, you're doing better in your career, so we're going to focus on you more, and I'll do other things around the house. So it's kind of just a negotiation, and it's whatever brings in more prosperity to the family overall, rather than the individual goals of each person.
Okay. So I'd imagine that would be having to negotiate oh, what do we both want, right? What's something that we both want, basically. Yeah. That's man. Okay. So if we want to talk about so yeah, recording and everything. But
okay.
yeah. Like Catholicism and magic was where what we were talking about.
Oh yeah,
Before. Yeah.
yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I had much more to say on the subject. I think picking up where I left off, basically, it wasn't just magic. It was the chaos magic tradition that kind of, it's like a, what some people have called it, like a postmodern way of looking at religious traditions. It's almost like a comparative religion way of looking at things. Uh, you know, comparative religion is just as what it sounds.
Right. Like
Um,
seeing the common denominators almost.
yeah, and I think on the Discord server they talk about universalism versus, I don't know, what's the other thing?
Oh gosh, I should know. I've been in enough conversations but I'm not sure exactly what.
No, I guess it you know, maybe without the precise word that they use, you know, it's just like my tradition is the correct tradition, whereas like universalism is more,
Right.
you know, let's take the best, and or like which where the different things or kind of overlap.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, that sounds more like the attitude of a lot of not all Orthodox, but a lot of Orthodox, uh, and I mean, yeah. That sounds
Well, I
like
mean,
personal.
is are they universalists, or are they, you know, they think
The
that their traditions the
I,
right and true wrong?
Thinking about it now, it almost seems like an individual person thing rather
Okay,
than
yeah,
like a
probably makes
tradition.
sense.
Yeah.
There's a difference between the Orthodox and the Catholic Nicene creeds. And sorry, I think there was like a squirrel in the bird feeder. um, I think the filioque, I can't say that word, but
Filioque or
filioque, yeah. Uh, but like there's one consubstantial with the Father. So, and I've been kind of going over that in my head as to like the actual divinity of Jesus, or at least to what degree he's divine. And I'm not entirely sure that the, at least as I understand the proposition, is that, you know, he is equal to in every way, or at least consubstantial as with like God the Father.
right,
Um,
right, right. I was just having a conversation about that, about the it was called with Sam Adams. I don't know if you know who Sam is, but he was talking about like his belief is something it's called like monarchical Trinitarianism, where the father is kind of like the overarching um, monarch, right? And then Christ is uh, equal, but somehow equal, but oh gosh, separate but equal. I don't want to
okay.
say that, but it's yeah. It was a it's a I think it's a it doesn't come off as like uh not true. I don't or repugnant. Like I'm not like uh terrified of that view. I just don't know if it's
Well,
true.
to take a very materialist or
Right.
kind of reductionist way of looking at it, is the human body capable of embodying all the like the equivalent of like a ultra super being that is larger than the universe? It is bigger than the universe, and it's all like I'm not sure that's possible. Like, is the human mind that, I don't know how consciousness works. So maybe like we just don't understand it, and like he was able to communicate with the Father and embody that completely. But if you like take like a pantheism way of saying, well, the universe is like just one big organism, and like all the stars and planets kind of constitute its brain and its consciousness, and it's evolving. And just think about the sheer size of such a being, like of the computational power, and the it's it's like saying an ant is able to embody the consciousness of a human being, right? At least that's how I see it. And so when people say that Jesus is the same as, something like that, that's, far beyond everything else,
Well,
I have a hard time accepting that from just a practical sense.
yeah, and I think, well, there's the doctrine that Christ was there, like with the Father at the beginning, which is like what, like that's I sort of get it. But it does, like, that is a good question. And like my way of going would be like, hope something like that would be true, and follow it until it proves uh, proves otherwise. Almost, it's like, well, like, follow that and see how it turns out. It might, I mean, it might be true, but it's
Well, I think that I just kind of sidestep the whole thing and say, well, this is Darth Vader is Luke's father. It's true within that story. So like the Christian story says that Jesus is God. Okay. That's true within the story of that. And or is like symbolically true, or I don't know how you can kind of tease that apart.
yeah.
And basically like how the story arrives to me, I have no way of knowing that's the case. Like I can't get inside Jesus's head. I wasn't there. So what comes to me is the story, you know.
Right. Have you heard that it's either that Jesus was either he was what he said he was, or he was crazy, or he was a great like trickster, basically. Those are your three options there. Um, and yeah, they're compelling for different different reason, because you just, yeah, it's something you have to like.
Well, I mean, I think just from a historical sense, you know, Jesus did have a huge impact in history. He did start a religion that changed the world, changed the Roman Empire, and still persists to this day. So, I mean, give him credit where it's due. Like, that's no small feat. But he's not the only person who's done this. Like, there's Buddha and Muhammad, Confucius. You know, there's many different traditions besides just the Western European tradition or Eastern European tradition.
Right. I have you. I still need to read Tom Holland's Dominion, because I think that's sort of what that goes into. It just the historical just the impact. I think is like worth. It's something I need to look at more. I know it was.
Well, I think like if you have the top down way of looking at it, or the propositional acceptance, Jesus is equal to God, or you have the kind of bottom up way of looking at it, where he established a religion that still persists to this day. It's quite meaningful to a lot of people. It's transformative. There's a lot of good ideas and wisdoms, and in a very fruitful and prosperous mode of being for people to adopt. So in that sense, you know, he was, I think, like divine in that way. He might even been the most divine person that has ever existed. But you know, it's it's going from the bottom up, making the case, but not really getting, because in my mind, there's a huge gap between most divine being that has ever existed on Earth to like infinity of the whole entire existence. You know, God Himself.
Right.
Like the best isn't the absolute. It's kind of how I think about it, or at least it's. And you know, I've listened to Paul Vander Clay, and you know, I love the guy. You know, listening to him made me go back to church, and because he you know, at least made the case that you need a church.
Yeah. How long have you been listening to him? Like, how long have you been on the Discord?
Well, I think I was a late comer to the Discord. Well, sort of. I wasn't like the earliest adopter, but I've been watching his channel for pretty much since his first video about Peterson. Was that like 2 years ago?
Or, that sounds about
maybe 2.5.
Yeah. That sounds about the right amount of time.
But you know, he keeps trying to make the case about the physicality of the resurrection.
Right.
And I'm even willing to believe. I think it's So there's layers of probability. It's highly probable that Jesus was very holy and divine. Okay. I'm able to accept that. I mean, like the history of it all kind of pans out. I think it's just empirically true. Just how we can see the effects that Jesus has had on the world. And then you have the resurrection. Maybe. I mean, there's people who, I don't know, there's like that guy who can control his body temperature.
Sure.
So there's a lot of like these people who are so in tune with their body that they can, change their body temperature. They can do all sorts of like weird things, stop their heart rate.
Right.
So could have Jesus been able to heal himself and, and like be resurrected? That's within, it's more, we're talking more improbable, but I would say within the realm of probability. The most highly improbable thing that I can think of is that he is like God himself in every way. So like, I'm willing to believe in the resurrection before I believe that.
So if he resurrected, right? That would, oh gosh, would that put him closer to God? Like, would that prove more? Like, what else would be proof that somebody is God? I guess. Like, what? And I don't know what Paul's recent video. Like, would you would you believe if you saw the body like resurrect type?
No, like that's not proof enough of God to me. I think that's proof of something miraculous. I don't think that's proof that someone is God. I think what is the unique thing that God can do is but to create a universe, or create all of being. I think that's the defining characteristic of God.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know how I would react. It'd probably be a combination of like freaked out and kind of like probably like overjoyed, like just seeing this thing be possible, like this thing in front of me. But yeah, it's a.
Well, I mean, are there aliens in the universe who are, more advanced in consciousness or technology or whatever that, they would be able to do all the things that Jesus did? Are there such beings in the universe? I don't know. So, like, I think that, and we've been able to imagine things that are more, at least physically, just being able to imagine things, not, we were able to imagine beings who were more miraculous than Jesus. So I think Jesus might have seemed miraculous in his time, but like he didn't if you're looking for proof, I mean, I think his resurrection might be proof that he's, you know, ultra divine or something like that. Like he had attained some sort of uh, you know, divine level of understanding of the universe. You know, maybe he's like he had an IQ of 300 or something like that, right? Just something that's far beyond what
Right.
we
He was a superpower, or right, or something along.
right. And so somebody who's that smart and is able to integrate so many different things, and he maybe had a very clear understanding of like what humanity is and how we relate to another, because like the teachings of Jesus, they're very actually very narrowly focused on human interactions. And right, he doesn't really talk about science, or he doesn't talk about
He talks about like wisdom uh, which parables, like living, yeah, definitely living in a social uh
yeah, it's a very social dynamic that he's always kind of speaking to.
yeah. Not, I don't know strictly, because there is an like for me at least, like the relationship with Christ is very much a personal, it's a personal one. Like it's like treating someone like the right way. Like there's almost a like an aloneness that well, either way, but it seems like sometimes there's an aloneness that precedes the like proper like interaction with the social environment. I guess it's like prayer, and that's involves people, but it there is like an element of like,
Well,
I gotta yeah.
the way I've been thinking about it is like, what if there was a wolf who was the wolf of wolves, and he incarnated, you know, and wolves had a hard time figuring out how to manage their social order. And then this wolf showed the wolves how to be in such a way that they can always kind of get along and maximize their wolfness. So in that sense, I think, you know, like if there was like an essence of wolfness, then, you know, maybe Jesus is like the essence of humanity, and it's like humanity on how it should organize itself,
Right.
or at least, you know, he organized that principle or manifested that principle, and by aligning ourselves with that principle, you know, we can, you know, come closer to the, you know, the kingdom of heaven on earth.
Right. And then I would say, I think that like Jesus was aligning himself with something, um, with something uh, else, like that, like well, just like the the father, the masculine, the paternal, the eternal paternal spirit, right? Um, or like I think, I mean, Peterson's done a pretty good like that. I think that's why he has the the following, right? Because he like filled, he sort of, I think, partially like filled a space for like, or showed that eternal paternal spirit like still like was around, and people, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But then I was thinking, okay, so with the wolf metaphor, right, or analogy, do you like how the wolf of wolves, how wolf like how wolf like would the wolf have to be before, like you said, oh, this is the son of this is the son of the wolf of wolves. Oh, you would say if the wolf of wolves, like the king of kings, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the wolf of wolves arrived, you would say it was the wolf of wolves. Like there wouldn't be any like doubt or like
Yeah, but
yeah,
is the Wolf of Wolves, so like this Christianity is very human centric
right,
orientation.
right,
So like um, there's nothing beyond, it doesn't take into account like other parts of the universe. So in a way, it's kind of solipsistic
hmm.
in that way.
Well, yeah. It's like um, even if an individual, right, like okay, so if there was, oh gosh, it's like if there was another, let's say the aliens arrived and saw and like would that reduce the value of like the king of kings, like we'll say like best the best man uh the best man will say like living, an alien shows up. I don't know that would, I mean, relatively speaking, it would like reduce the value because, but I don't know that like
Well, I mean, if we met the wolf of wolves,
right.
with that, I would think it's like, wow, this is a magnificent wolf, or maybe there's something odd about it that we just don't understand. So maybe at least in that level, we might just say, well, this is really strange, one of a kind wolf. But would we want to be that wolf? Would we say, this wolf is like worship worthy, or like should we adopt that wolfness into our mode of being, or is that wolfness just for wolves?
Oh, um so okay, so if I was a wolf, yes, I would try and be like, I would try and adopt that wolf's uh behavior. But like as a person, no, you wouldn't. You would say that's a magnificent creature, right? Or that
Yeah.
that wolf sure is capturing uh, the archetypal wolfness, right? It probably
Or it's,
take
that's the
that
best way to be a wolf,
right,
you know
right.
it, and so I think that's kind of like what Jesus did, is that he exemplified the best way to be human, um, which is no small feat. I'm you know I'm raising him up, but I'm also putting a cap on it too. So because I don't I don't see him the case hasn't been made to me that he's beyond that level, you know, like he is the most perfect for us.
I don't know that okay, so I'm still playing with the wolf metaphor real quick. Like if you were a wolf and the best wolf showed up, like I don't think like that's the wolf you would worship, right? Like if you were a wolf, so then like the like okay, so now as a human, it's like you're looking for the legitimate thing, and it's like okay, so it's God, and I guess like there could be some, I guess you could like there could be some suspicion about whether Christ was whether he was that. So is that sort of, is there like a doubt, just a doubt as to like his
full
being
absolute divinity. Or not even divinity, like transcendentness of complete. He is consubstantial with the Father, the, you know, and in Vanderklay terms, God number one, or the Irenic God. So like either a pantheism equivalent, or at least to that degree, or a panendeism, which is like the universe within God. Panendeism, pan all within God. So like I think the scope of the claim that Jesus is that big is, for me, too much. It's a bridge too far for me to cross, because the case just hasn't been made to my satisfaction.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that following Jesus is a bad thing. I don't like the
right. He's that wolf as much as we can.
Yeah. Does that line of code have to be in the religion for it to run? Or does the system crash without it?
Good question. I think the system might crash with.
So yeah, I just going off of feeling, I don't think it's necessary anymore. It might have been necessary under other, let's say, older versions of the software, if we want to extend the computer metaphor. That line of code was necessary for it to run, but we've kind of reached the limit of that software's capability, in my opinion. And I think so. Well, all right, let make another analogy. Like if we just kind of go and take like a historical scientific way, like with Kuhn, you know, he showed the progression of different scientific theories. So let's say Newtonian mechanics and physics is the equivalent of medieval Catholicism or Christianity. And that code worked pretty well. That system worked pretty well and pretty much in most circumstances. And in fact, it's still quite useful today. Like, but it's also something that high school students can learn, you know, it is something that most of industry still operates. So you build bridges with it, you build cars, you know, all the kind of like physical stuff that we use every day. Like that's Newtonian physics is quite useful. There is, but as we kind of develop science, we reached a certain point where the Newtonian physics seems to fall apart. So there was an outer edge of our understanding that applying that theory was no longer sufficient to
right.
to you know, continue progressing in terms of our understanding of the universe. And so we came up with, you know, quantum mechanics. We came up with general relativity. So we have different theories for the small and the very large. And even those theories, now we've discovered, have limitations. And so, like, you know, I would say I would make the equivalent of, you know, the new theories of like Einstein's general relativity and quantum mechanics as like, you know, the kind of the postmodern phase of physics. But now we've reached the limit of that. And, you know, there's some things that can't be reconciled within the theories. And so I think in a similar way, I think Christianity has to update its code, and it has to recontextualize some things about its like universal propositions, in order to at least continue on. Because like there was a pre-modern concept of Christianity during the Middle Ages that seemed to work fine, but it wasn't modernist. It was, you know, it didn't have all the problems that modernism had.
Right.
And so, but then Christianity moved into the modern era, and now it's, you know, it had to kind of incorporate some of the modernist ideas and perspectives.
Yeah. Was that? Do you think that had to do with the Renaissance, or like where do you see like the progression becoming more modern, or like the I don't know if you would call it like humanism, or like
Well, I think the printing press probably had a lot to do with it.
There you go. There you go.
And so
Ideal.
I think that kind of shifted the whole conversation towards more of a propositional way of thinking rather than, you know, a participatory way of doing things. Because I don't think most people in the Middle Ages had a complete understanding of all the propositions, and they didn't have their own Bible. They couldn't investigate things on their own, and they pretty much had to accept most things by the authority of the church, you know, either through their local priest or their bishop. And right. But now, you know, the modernist way of Christianity was to, you know, take the Bible, extract all the propositions out of it, and kind of lay it all out. Like, you know, if you were stripping a car and, you know, examining each part and seeing how it all kind of comes together. And so it was a very kind of systematic approach to the whole thing rather than what I would think it was kind of more of an organic process before.
Right. I was reading. So do you have you read much C.S. Lewis?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I should though.
Yeah. It's really I was like it's really surprising. Like I was reading his the discarded image, which I've been that's right.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard Paul talk about that a lot.
Yeah. So it's about the like the medieval worldview and the Renaissance worldview, and it's basically it's a an introduction to medieval and Renaissance literature. And there, like, I was surprised at how much Lewis was saying that the medieval world was like there was a model of the universe. It was more symbolic, maybe like. Um, like the cosmology, but I've got to read more of it. But basically, he was saying like people like you know uh, Galileo and kind of like science. It basically like put this model in question, and that was like um, a problem. And the mystics were basically the people who kind of like would update the model because they didn't use like for them it seemed more like they were discovering rather than like using this uh, model. But yeah I would it's pretty awesome, especially like just that distinction, like that the mystics weren't using a model. And I think that's sort of the view of the medieval world that I had, and I didn't realize that it was only one, like that in general, like the medieval world, they did do a lot of like trying to uh, make a model of like the Christian world view, basically. like um like it talks a lot about like the firmament and the ether, and kind of like the gods that were like in the world, right? Like
Yeah.
that was sort of like the medieval deal. But yeah.
Well, I mean, I symbolically, I can understand that view. It's like they're seeing certain patterns in the world, and so they create these symbolic analogies to kind of get a hold of those patterns. And you know,
Yeah, and for them it was like, oh, this is real. Like it's the most real thing to them, right? Like this is sort of like shapes their data today. Like I don't know if you've watched Lord of Spirits at all, but it was like this was sort of like almost seemed like their world was more enchanted, I guess like the um, but yeah, it's I've still got a lot to still got to learn, but it was
well, I mean, like, what, so like one symbolic pattern would be what, the angel hierarchy sort of thing.
right,
Okay.
right, or like the symbolic pattern of like the fall would be like uh, like a pattern that happens with uh, uh, people. I don't
Well, I mean, I think it is real, but it's it's not real in a, I think the modernists tend to confuse the symbolic imagery with the actual thing. So they say like, well, where's the angel with 20 eyes and 6 wings, and like,
Right.
where is it? Can you point to it? It's like, that's not it's meant to be symbolic.
Right.
It's the wings mean certain things about the pattern.
Right.
The eyes mean certain things about the pattern. It's not a one-to-one material correspondence to some being out there. I mean, the pattern is out there, and the pattern may be even conscious, but it's not. But um, we have no way of apprehending that pattern unless we kind of are able to symbolically uh, flesh it out in that sense.
Yeah. 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 And I grew up with a lot of people who did the literalist thing, and I mean, it was always fun, like, listening, but yeah, yeah, I grew up with a lot of that. Um, yeah, yeah, it's it's interesting now how, like, I don't know how much like I guess just like that literalist worldview, like how, like, I've wondered before how much uh, truth there, because there's something like as I've thought about it, like I remember that view of, like, the angels really being, like, uh, around. Like, there was something, like, when I was younger, there was something palpable about it, like something very like like attractive, and I don't know what happened to it, but does that like right? I mean, maybe I think part of it was just like a very
Well, like going back to my earlier point, I think that literalist way of thinking about things has also kind of come to an end. We've reached the limit of that way of that mode of thinking, that or that framework. Um, and I think, I think postmodernism is a reaction to that, but I think we need to even go beyond the postmodern. Uh, so I don't think there's going back. There's only going forward. Um, but I think that we can't abandon all the other intermediate steps. So we can't just say, well, the best is, or the most current phase of our understanding about these things is here. So I'm only going to live in this space here, and never mind about all the other steps that were necessary to get to that point. Um, to go back to the scientific model analogy, like, people don't calculate building bridges with quantum mechanics. So, like, quantum mechanics is more true than Newtonian physics, but it's not it's the wrong model to use for building
right.
bridges.
For something,
You could,
for something like,
and it's overly complicated and unnecessary.
right, right. And I think that's like the I heard Peterson say once, referring to like Piaget's developmental uh, theory, like his accommodation and what was the other one? Uh, Accommodation and something else. Basically, when you build a new model, you want it to be able to do much of the same things that your other model was able to do, plus like a few more things, right? Or
Right. Yeah.
something else. Like you uh, don't want basically don't want to throw out the good, right?
Yeah. But sometimes when you do build a new model, in order for it to do the new thing and also do the old thing, a lot of the underlying propositions, the axioms of that model are actually a little bit different than the old model. So uh, Newtonian physics operates on the assumption that everything is just this kind of point mass particle, whereas in quantum mechanics, everything's a wave. So, you know, quantum mechanics can do everything that the old model does, but also more. But the underlying axiom of that model is uh, not the same as the Newtonian axiom. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, if we are going to update the model for Christianity in like say postmodern way, some things need to be reassessed. Some of the axioms for it to continue on. Now that's kind of, I know that's heresy, right? That's heretical thinking. But I think it's necessary if we're going to preserve the tradition. I don't know. I I don't want to get too esoteric, but um, I think the new model is kind of like a fifth person perspective. And what I mean by that is that if we have different perspectives, you have the first person perspective. It's like you take in data and you have your perspective. And then on the second person perspective, you're become aware that other people have other perspectives. And then the third person perspective is that you take all the first person perspectives and then you kind of mush them together to get like an average. And then that becomes like a framework, a new framework. So like that becomes like a worldview.
So okay. I always thought like third person perspective was like, well, I'm just thinking of like video games, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, think about it as they
thinking,
always call the third person as like objective,
right,
an objective perspective, which is means standing outside the first person. But what it really is, you know, you you look at an apple, you say it's red. I look at an apple, I say it's red.
right,
So the third person perspective of that apple is that the apple is red,
right,
you know,
right,
because
right, with maybe some nuance, with regards to like the individual, like how you see the red, right, or like
yeah.
how it's perceived, right.
So each culture kind of develops its own third person perspective or way of life and being and you might call that religion or culture, because all the people within that culture agree with how they all see the world. And so they see that they all look through that same frame, and they can agree on
right,
that, oh yeah, I see the same thing, or I think the same thing.
right,
And so that becomes like a third person perspective of the world. And that's kind of like the modernist phase of the world. And then the problem is that we've kind of transitioned to a fourth person perspective, where we become aware that there are other third person perspectives that don't see the world the same way.
right, right.
And so like, well, how do you reconcile these? It's almost equivalent to a second person perspective. It's like you become aware of someone else having consciousness, right? You know, so you become aware that there are different worldviews.
Right.
And so, and I think that's part of the reason why a lot of like the postmodern people are saying, well, we need empathy, we need compassion for these other viewpoints, which is like saying that's kind of like how you develop empathy when you learn about other people's perspective and the second person perspective way of looking at things.
Right, right, right. And it's less, it almost seems like less detached, almost like the second person compared to the fourth person perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it allows you to uh yeah, yeah. I think like the with the fourth person perspective, if you can hold different views, I don't think there's any like the the empathy can come, and it can come like in a healthier way, because you're not like, I think there is a level of almost like a level of detachment or ability to see the perspective without like yeah, I think that that ability, the fourth person perspective, is like necessary for like a correct uh like change in worldview, rather than it being like an emotional, like an empathy uh thing, even though like emotions do
Well, so you would say that, orthodoxy is a third person perspective, um, or Southern Baptist is another third person. It's like worldview, right?
right, right, right. And
Islam.
I think members can have a fourth person perspective, but for the most part, you are like in like you are in it trying to find out the truth. Yeah, 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 yeah. There's
So
like things.
yeah, you're right. Like members within that community can have a fourth person perspective, and they can be aware of other third person perspectives or other worldviews, and say, hey, we need to be aware and kind of like respect that in the same way we respect other people's view in the second person perspective. So like the first person perspective and the third person perspective are similar. The second person perspective and the fourth person perspective are similar. So like the first person perspective is just me, it's only contained here. But I had my own frame of how I interpret the universe individually. And so in similar way, it's kind of like it's a collapse to a single point of understanding. The third person perspective does that as well. The second person perspective is all about empathy and understanding how that there is other consciousnesses besides your own. And so similar with the fourth person perspective, it's kind of like an empathic approach to other third person perspectives.
Right. And like realizing they're like first realizing they're there and then being able to like see them, I guess.
Yeah. And the problem is we've as a society only started to, we're transitioning into that fourth person perspective because due to globalization and the internet, like we are just kind of assaulted with all sorts of third person perspectives that we need to try to make sense of it all. And the first step is to acknowledge that they're out there. But I think go one step further, fifth person perspective, which by the way would be like the third and like the first, right? So how does the third come together? It takes a lot of different perspectives and mushes them together to create a new perspective. So what I'm saying with like in terms of Christianity and religion, we need to, and this is kind of like a universalist move. We have to take all these different perspectives and see where they kind of agree on. So like with the apple example, we both agree that the apple is red. So what are all the other religions saying about reality and the proper modes of being as to like what it means to be human? And that it's not to say that we abandon our traditions, because we can't just function in a purely third person perspective, right?
Right.
That's not how we approach the world. We have a first person perspective. We need a second person perspective to deal with other people. We need a third person perspective to give us some sort of like framework that helps us interact with other people in a communal way. And we need a fourth person perspective in order to respect those other ways. And then, finally, there should be maybe like a meta way of religion, how we can kind of reconcile and make all the religions at least get along, right? That's kind of the point of religion.
Like what I'm thinking right now is like the third person perspective. Like I'm thinking of like having a closed religious system, right? Or like a tradition, or like my thought is like there is a degree of almost like comfort or like oh, there's enough, like let's say like with just a religious tradition, like there's enough here to get at to where to where it's like the other things almost like don't they don't matter at least for like regulating like your emotions immediately, because you have enough going on within the tradition, but I think that's what like if we're thinking about it in terms of like, okay, so pretend maybe like the third person perspective is like uh gosh.
I would think, like I said, it's your, if we put it into religious terms, it's your particular religion that you're in.
Right.
So you say you're Orthodox, I'm Catholic. So those are our third person perspectives that we inhabit.
Yeah.
And
so at the moment, I'm interested. I'm actually interested in both Catholicism and Orthodoxy.
okay.
More Orthodoxy. That's where I'm moving towards, and I feel like um, I would call myself like Orthodoxy. That's yeah.
See, and
but I don't know if I'm allowed.
the way I think about it is that you should adopt either one. I'm not personally invested into like, I'm not going to try to convert you to Catholicism, but I definitely think you should at least pick one or some other, because you need that. If you decide to become a Mormon, that's cool, but you need something to hold on to like that, and in a way that you can build a community around you. So, and that's kind of like, I guess, a fourth person perspective way of looking at it. It's like, I'm not very invested into like saying that my tradition is the absolute truth, but I think it's important that you need something.
Yeah. Totally agreed. Some sort of culture, right? Or
Yeah.
things around you to uh, inspire. And I think yeah.
And I think the fourth and fifth person perspectives are only, so like, first person is dealing with yourself, second person is dealing with just your immediate people around you, third person is like your community of people, maybe on a national level, maybe on a state level or something, like not too big, it's not global. The fourth person perspective is, the scale of it becomes much greater.
Right.
Right.
It's like international bordering on global, right? It's like reaching for
yeah. That's only, yeah. The fourth person perspective only becomes necessary at that point. And the reason why we need to find some way to at least have some sort of way to integrate all these worldviews on a global scale, that we're able to keep the peace, is that because we have the capacity to completely destroy the world if we come to violent disagreement. It used to be back in the biblical days, people would invade other clans, there were like skirmishes of thousands, hundreds of people. The consequence of it all wasn't, the scale wasn't that great. And so how do you reconcile two third person worldviews? Well, you just destroy the other one and then problem solved. But moving forward, it wasn't much of a big deal. We can't do that anymore. Total genocidal annihilation of one side or the other. We will destroy ourselves in the process. you know. And so that, in that way, I think we need to update the Christian code to be able to exist in that fifth person perspective world.
Right. That sounds right. I've got to think more about I've just got to think more, but it's definitely not dying sounds like a good plan. Yeah.
Definitely the floor, right?
Yeah. Dude, like thank you for coming on, Surok.
Oh, thank you.
Again,
thank you for having me.
Talk number 2. I mean, we can stop recording, or I mean, I'm curious, like what you've been like up to. How's have you been doing any research, or just like thinking about things basically that we've been talking about?
I mean, there hasn't been a particular subject that has kind of sparked my interest as of late that I've been trying to dig into too much. So just kind of listening to the Paul Vanderklay videos. I love him. You know, I listen to all his videos. So, but
it's good to have something just to like to chew on, basically, that you can.
So I've been trying to figure out like what is the nature of Jesus, I guess, is my latest project in my head.
And it seems like you've got some, like, you've got a ways, it's definitely more
well, I hope I'm on the right track, because a lot of ideas go into nowhere.
And I think like I usually take the, like, you know, if the pragmatist route, like there is, you need to be looking for the truth, but I'm usually a sucker for like an inspiring idea that and that's like I usually will like, of course it has to ring true, but if it can do that and inspire, or if it feels like it makes my life better having followed it, or whatever, I try and I look out for that. So that's one, like, that's just one barometer, I guess,
mm-hmm.
to truth. But yeah. So it does, like, for me, there is a call it like a, maybe you'd call it like an irrational or not irrational, but like I'm definitely looking for like the inspiration, I guess.
Yeah, kind of like falling in love with an idea, or being infatuated with it.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully I'd call it in love with an idea, and I'm not just you know, oh my gosh, betting an idea, but I don't. Yeah, I don't know. But oh my, this. So yeah. Like, thank you for coming on, Surok.
All right, pleasure.
I really appreciate it. Okay. Yeah. If you want to talk about any of these ideas more, I'm totally like, I'm open.
Okay. Yeah, that was great. Let me know when you want to do this again.
Okay. All right. Have a good Sunday.
All right.
All right. Thank you,
Bye.
sir.